Hey again, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to grow great seedlings when you start them indoors. Now, I start pretty much all of my seedlings indoors because I want a really early start on the season. But when you do that, you have to think of a few things. You have to cover off soil, moisture, temperature, light, air movement, and of course when to harden them off and move them out. I'll be covering all of that in this video here, but this is an exciting video for me as well because I get to give away a grow lamp made by Mars Hydro. Now, Mars Hydro provided me one of these grow lamps, so it's a high-powered one that they allowed me to evaluate in growing my roses indoors. I posted that video last summer. I'm using that grow light now for my seedlings, which is fantastic. And when I talked to the people at Mars Hydro, they were excited to provide one of those for me to give away to one of the viewers of this video. So I'm going to give you the details of that giveaway towards the end of the video here. So let's talk about how to grow great seedlings, and then you can make an entry. So let's talk about soil, or rather I should say in this case that this is not a natural soil, but rather a specially formulated potting mix for seedlings. It's not so important what the brand is as so much as it is about the properties of the mix. So this is a propagation mix, you can tell, because it's quite fine. In looking at the texture of it, you don't have any big chunks of bark or anything else that's going to stop the young seedling roots from growing down through it. Second of all, it does have a fair amount of perlite, that's the white stuff in there, to help it with good drainage so that the seedlings don't get waterlogged. The third thing about it is that it is not formulated with a whole bunch of fertilizer in it. So if you ever get a potting mix or a soil that has the NPK built right into the bag, that means they put fertilizer into the mix, and I don't like having fertilizer in a seedling mix. It could get too hot and burn the young roots, so I'd rather grow them in an empty mix until such time as the seedling has grown its first true set of leaves, and it's time then to add in the liquid feed fertilizer at a low rate just to start it on its feeding program. The last thing I'll say about this, and this is what differentiates it from natural soil, is that this is a sterile mix. All of the ingredients were put in there, not with a whole bunch of bacteria and fungus and soil life living in it, which, you know, for a mature plant or plants grown naturally in your garden may be just fine, but when growing young seedlings, it can leave them open to diseases such as damping off. And damping off is a fungal disease that can be present in your soil, and then as they look like they're thriving, your young seedlings may just thin out at a certain point and then tip over, and that's the end of them. So I prefer to grow with a sterile potting mix. I'm growing in a plug tray, and I prefer to do it that way because I can fit a lot of seedlings into a small amount of space. This one here is a 105, has 15 cells in that direction and 7 cells in the other, which gives me a decent amount of soil space for the young seedlings to grow into before I have to transplant them up. You can certainly, for some plants that are a little faster growing, put them into a larger cell or even into little pots, and that's your preference. I just like to get a lot of seedlings into a small area because I'm using grow lights and I want to use them efficiently. So filling it with soil is just an action like this, where you pour it on, and then instead of pushing it down, you just rake it across. I've seen some people do the other thing, which is to grab it and sort of push it down and sort of try to cram it and force it down into those holes. But for the young roots, it's way better to have a loose mix. So the action you really want to be seeing here is that you're just raking the soil across the top and making sure it's even rather than pressing it down. One quick topic is that of soaking seeds, and some people swear by it, but honestly, I haven't found it to be too much of help. That said, a quick soak of 12 hours, even up to 24 hours, shouldn't really harm your chances, at least in my experience, although I've struggled to find the benefit of it when I've tried it side by side with just planting the seeds directly and then watering them in. Just really quickly on the planting of the seed itself, I usually dibble with the back end of a pencil and then drop the seed in, covering it over just lightly. The rule of thumb is that for a large seed, you can bury it a little bit deeper, and the smaller the seed, the more likely it is to just be left on the surface of the soil or just lightly covered over. If you do a quick Google search, if you're trying a new variety, on light requirements for germination and then the name of the plant, it will tell you whether it should be left on the surface or whether it should be covered over. And for example, the coriander seed or cilantro seed that I just planted should definitely be covered, whereas a lavender seed, which is quite small, should just be left on the top surface of the soil. If it is something that has low germination rates, in your experience, it does make sense in a cell tray like this to sometimes put in 2 or 3 into the cell so that you don't waste the space in the tray. Here are some Agastache seeds that are germinating for me quite nicely. And let's use that as a cue to talk about germination temperatures, because most plants will germinate over a wide range of temperatures, centering somewhere around the peak of 20 to 25 degrees Celsius or 68 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you look at my thermometer here, you'll see that that's exactly where I am, about 72 degrees Fahrenheit. And if I wanted to choose my ideal temperature for germination for this room, I would try to choose it on the lower end of the range. And the reason I would do that is because I'm trying to walk the balance between seeds that I'm trying to germinate and then the seedlings that I'm trying to harden off for the next stage when I move them outside into my greenhouses. So I like to have it on the lower end. I don't get much lower germination rates or much slower germination, but what I do get is slower growing, firmer, and easier to harden off plants before I move them outside. I manage humidity and moisture in my seed trays just by using a sprayer like this one and giving everything a very even spray once or twice a day. I also have a small humidifier in the room that keeps the humidity up to 60 or 70%. There is a bit of a trade-off when it comes to humidity in your seedling trays, insofar as high humidity and high temperature will allow for faster seed germination, but your little seedlings will be prone to a little bit more stretch. They'll grow a little bit lankier if they have high humidity and temperature. Also, high humidity does tend to promote things like rot. So some people ask me whether I use the plastic covers to germinate my seeds, and the answer is no, I do not cover any of my seedlings. And once again, it goes back to that. As soon as you have really high humidity levels, your seedlings are a little more susceptible to things like damping off and other rot diseases after germination. So let's have a good look at this light source and see why it's so important to have a full spectrum light like this to provide excellent light for seedling growth. And I want to have a closer look at some of these larger seedlings to just show you how stocky and firm they are growing. This is a plant called Tithonia, or its common name is Mexican sunflower, and I was determined to grow these early this year because they sold so well at the farmer's market last year. I wanted to put them into pots and get them large. But generally, if you potted these in or seeded these in February, which I did, you would end up with stretching seedlings, ones that are having a hard time by this point with a lack of light and just not having enough energy to grow great roots. Well, here's the roots on them, and they've grown fantastic. So these are stocky, they're well grown, they're a dark green color, and these are going to transplant beautifully right now into a 9-centimeter pot and maybe even to a larger pot size to be really impressive this season. These here are my seedlings of lavender, and again, another example of a plant that really likes to have a good bright light level that I wouldn't be able to achieve in the house other than having artificial supplemental lighting. And you can see there, once again, that it's maintaining a really nice compact habit as a seedling, and I've checked the roots on these, and they're beautiful as well. So another couple weeks under the lights here, and a little bit of hardening off, and I'll be putting them outside. And that's thanks to having a sufficiently powerful grow lamp on the inside. I do get a little bit of sunlight in this room, I have to say, but I've seen what happens with just the sunlight, and everything ends up a little bit stretchy and not in great condition by the time I transition it out to the greenhouse. And speaking of transitioning, these ones are ready for it. This is an echinops or globe thistle, and it has its true leaves in, it's filled that plug, and it's ready to go outside. So what I'll start with is, again, by cooling down the growing area here in preparation of moving out, and then I'll take this and I will place it outside. I have a deck outside of this room. I'll place it outside for a couple of days during the daytime, not at night, just to accustom it to having that extra airflow and the conditions, the cooler conditions outside, and after that I'll move it out to my greenhouse. One way to help your seedlings toughen up is to just offer them some gentle air movement, and even a regular household oscillating fan will take care of that, just to see the leaves move a little bit with that gentle air movement. Another thing I'll do is I'll open up the windows to the room, weather permitting, if the temperatures aren't too cold, and that helps to toughen up those little seedlings for their next step. That's it for growing information, and now on to the giveaway portion of this video. If you're interested in having that Mars TS1000 full spectrum LED grow lamp shipped out to you, here are the ground rules. First of all, it is restricted to viewers who are in Canada, the United States, UK, and Germany, which is a substantial portion of my audience, but not everyone, I'm sorry. To enter the contest, if you drop your comment down below the video, and in the comment, all I want to know is what plants you're interested in growing with your new LED grow lamp, what seeds you'd like to start, how you intend to use it. That's it. I'm not judging your horticultural choices, but it will give me something to randomly select one of those comments for Mars Hydro to ship you that lamp. All right, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see your comments below.